Hi, this is Tutor Nick P, and this is lesson 347. The title of today's lesson is the difference between sympathy and empathy. Yeah, this is another one that comes up that students will ask, what's the difference between these two? Because they both mean that you feel sorry for someone. All right, let's take a look at the note here. If someone has sympathy for another person or animal in a bad situation, he or she feels sorry for them and often shows it in one's behavior. Yeah, like maybe wanting to do something for them or just saying, oh, sorry, that's too bad, or something like that. Let's continue here. If someone has empathy for another person, he or she is able to understand how that person feels because he or she is able to imagine what it is like to be them. When you have empathy for another person, you are able to put yourself in that other person's shoes. So this is really one of the key differences here. With empathy, you can imagine what it's like to be them. You can put yourself in their shoes. You are more likely to have empathy with someone in which you had the same or a very similar experience. That's why it's easier for you to put yourself in their shoes. Because you had that experience. It's easier for you to imagine what it's like to be in that position because maybe you had that experience, or like I said, maybe someone very close to you had it, so you were able to really feel it and understand it more. And in that sense, you feel even more sorry than just sympathy by itself. All right, so close to you, right, good. And this way you can relate to them better. Now, to be honest with you, you could probably use sympathy. In most cases, you use empathy. But it doesn't work the other way around. There's certain situations where empathy doesn't sound right or feel good. All right, let's look at, we have a number of examples here to try to cover this idea. Let's look at the sympathy ones are on top here. So example number one. I have sympathy for that three-legged dog. All right, so maybe it's a dog, it's missing a leg. You feel sorry for it. But this is a good example. I mean, if you try to put empathy in here, it just doesn't really work as much. I have empathy for that three-legged dog. Can you imagine what it's like to be a three-legged dog? Not exactly, so you wouldn't likely use empathy. You would most likely just use sympathy here. Okay, let's look at number two. I have sympathy for any families that lost loved ones in a terrorist attack. All right, again, you feel sorry for them. But if you yourself never lost one, it's not likely you have empathy for them. It's harder to imagine what it's like to be in their position. That's such a heart-wrenching experience that it's not likely that you could almost understand exactly the way they feel. You still feel sorry for them. You know they're in pain, but to put yourself in their shoes is a difficult one. So again, in these cases, with you use sympathy here, but empathy wouldn't work as well. Let's look at number three. When her grandfather died, I sent her a sympathy card. Yeah, I thought I'd just add this one. But really, this sympathy card is the noun phrase. But we don't say empathy cards. We say sympathy cards. I don't know. Empathy cards would be kind of weird. You're imagining you're in the same position as the dead person or the family. That doesn't feel quite right. So we don't say that. So if somebody dies and you want to say a card, to say like sorry for your loss or sorry that somebody died, we call that a sympathy card, not an empathy card. All right, and let's look at number four here. Well, it's the last sympathy one. I have no sympathy. Yeah, a lot of times you'll say that. You rarely say I have no empathy. That's just weird. But you say I have no sympathy for him. He brought this trouble on himself. Yeah, empathy is something you could relate to more. So you're not as likely to say you have no empathy, but you might say you have no sympathy for someone. All right, and now let's look at, these last three examples. These are good ones for empathy. Now that I am a parent, I have more empathy for parents who must deal with screaming children, because now you know what it's like to be in that position. I've often heard a lot of young people say this sometimes, what's wrong with those parents? Can't they take care of that screaming child? Until you're in that position, well, You may not realize how difficult it is to sometimes control children when they want to misbehave. All right, let's look at number 6. I have empathy for her because I had the same exact experience. Yeah, so again, it wouldn't be entirely wrong to use sympathy in these situations, but empathy, really has a deeper meaning that you really relate to them more. Again, you're putting yourself in their shoes. All right, and number 7 here. She has more empathy for children in an orphanage. That's one of the places that holds orphans, children's where they lost their parents or their parents are gone, because she was an orphan as a child. Okay, good. Anyway, I hope you got it. I hope it's clear. Hope it was informative. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.